All right. Welcome to another episode of Tilton the Scales. I'm your host, Nathan Logan. I'm joined tonight by I'm just me and one of my amigos. It's me and Chester Fredbone the third, one of the co-hosts. Welcome, Chet. Good to have you on. Glad we could connect this week. I know it's a busy week for everybody else. So how's your week been?
Week has been all over the place, but in essence, pretty good. How about you?
It's been a good week. I mean, I'm kind of prepping my house to be sold, so there's a lot of junk over here on this table, but or actually it's a dog kennel, but uh kind of packing some stuff up. That was another reason why I went to College Station today was I got a storage unit and I'll just in the next few weeks go back and forth and unpack my garage, so to speak, because everything that is kind of cluttered and the realtor doesn't want people to see, so to speak, is
Yeah,
in the garage. So the garage is kind of a semi-storage unit,
that makes
and
sense.
for everybody else out there, I'm planning a move from the Lone Star. The Lone Star Studio is going to move from the heart of Texas in Austin to College Station, Bryan College Station, which is where Texas A&M is. Still
Not
in
bad.
SEC country, but yeah,
Speaking
we'll
of, it was Cameron's birthday this week. We had a great birthday. I'm sending him to the Drake May quarterback camp, and he was thrilled about that. It's all over my Facebook. I think you liked it. Good stuff. And Texas A&M is one of those places. He's like, "Do I have to go there to make it to the NFL?" And I was like, "Well, if you end up playing quarterback for Texas A&M, you're decent chance you'll
Yeah,
make the
there's
NFL."
a few NFL players from A&M. One of
Sure,
them's Miles
sure.
Garrett.
Oh,
What's his name? Murray for the Arizona Cardinals played there.
yeah, Kyler Murray. Yeah.
Uh,
Yep.
yeah. Mark. What's his name? Mike Evans.
Mike
Who?
Evans is from Texas A&M.
Yeah, he
Oh,
he is an OG Texas A&M. He went there, didn't transfer, stayed there. He was there with Johnny Manziel.
well, that makes sense. So now Mike Evans,
Yeah.
Mandel are back together. Mike Evans never wants to leave Tampa. He never left A&M. That makes sense. I like
Yep.
that.
So yeah. All right, so today or tonight, I should say that we have a kind of a serious topic that I want to discuss, and I titled it "Our Final Destination." We've all seen the movies titled "Final Destination." We know what that has to deal with, right? It's just that is dealing with trying to outsmart death or like avoid death, you know. But this topic of conversation this week is geared directly towards talking about how you want your family and your loved ones to handle the proceedings, everything, not just will and testament, but like, do I want to be resuscitated? Do I want, if I go into an emergency room from a car accident unconscious, how my next of kin is going to be notified. So what's the next step? And there we'll go into details as far as why we want to talk about that. But so basically, to start the conversation, it's how. Well, first off, let me ask you this, Chet. Have you considered having these conversations with your wife or with your immediate family? Uh, I will answer the question for myself. I have not had that conversation with anybody, including my sister, who I'm very close with, or my mom. My mom hasn't had that conversation with me, so I'm, I'm. This is part of my education in the process. Something that I've always thought that I need to have a conversation with somebody. So have you specifically had any conversations, or has anybody had a conversation with you that might not have immediate family and has kind of trusted you with that? So
Yeah, I'll say this. I've talked to my wife about a will, making sure we do the right thing. As far as my own end and agency and my own end, um, I think whatever our expiration date is, whenever it is, other people are going to make the decisions for us, whether we like it or not. And so you have to trust someone to give you that agency, just trust it. And I have not had those conversations as I think intimately as I probably should with
yeah,
Sabrina. We both sort of like hint at it here and there, but obviously death is
yeah,
not a fun thing to talk about.
No,
Um,
not at all.
and so, we've talked about to like I've let her know like in passing, like this is my family right here. This is why I wear this all the time. I want this to be on me when I go down or whatever we do, but I don't even know if it's like cremation or very like we have not done a great job of making plans for that, although we should. Um, and it's probably because it's comfortable. That's the reason. And when I think about you and what you've gone through, um, sort of being active military, I can see that that's probably more in the forefront, especially when you're young, and that's not fair or cool, but I can see that. So in your head, what are your thoughts on it?
Oh, I mean, again, we've talked about this before, but I think being military, we do tend to see death as a different. We handle it differently,
Yeah.
where it's not. And I say I handle it differently. I don't. I bet I'm willing to bet somebody else out there on the internet, if they comment on this, they still see it the same way you do, and their prior service, their prior military. I just see it as, it's something that we have to deal with. It's no easier dealing with somebody that's taken away from us at 25 years old, as opposed to 75, 85, dying from natural causes because they've lived a long and fruitful life. Like, but for me specifically, yeah, I do deal with it differently. I do understand. I know it's coming. I feel like I'm a little bit more mature about it because of dealing with it in the military, whether it's, again, people that were killed in conflict, people that were, took their own life due to suicide, uh died in car accidents during holidays. Like, I mean, there's a lot of I've lost a lot of people that I know in the military in many different ways, and none of them are easy to deal with. But it's always the same thing as far as how I handle it. Like, it should be a celebration of life. Like, these individuals that I know that pass away, they wouldn't want us wallowing in sorrow and, feeling bad because they're no longer there. They would prefer that every step we take from this day on, we use that step as motivation, because that person isn't there to take a step. So every step we take, we use that as purpose and direction. So that's always how I've seen it and how I've tried to use it. But not to get off track, but I haven't had those conversations either, and I know that. And again, you made a point to say, whether you have those conversations or not, or we expect somebody to step in and make those decisions for us. But here's the rub on not having the conversation. When you talk about, no one knows what you want to do. When you go into an emergency room because you were in a car accident and you're unconscious, those individuals that are medical professionals, they're trying to preserve life, they're trying to save life, and they're probably going to use every measure, everything at their disposal, every technique that they can to keep you alive, to keep you breathing, which could potentially mean being put on a respirator, right? Being put on life assistance, electronic life assistance platforms. And that may or may not be your decision, had you had a conversation prior to this. But your family doesn't want you to leave this earth. So they leave you on that system for as long as they can afford it, because they don't want to have the pain and the sorrow of making the decision to pull the plug and essentially end your life. That's the way they're seeing it. Not like it wasn't your decision to drive down the road, and even though no fault of your own, you drove down the road and were hit head on by somebody that fell asleep at the wheel, blue collar guy, working man. Like, you know, it it's an accident. It happens in cars, right? But it led to your demise, essentially. And by not having those conversations, now we're putting that responsibility on those individuals, in a sense, to where they will feel guilt for the rest of their life, potentially feel guilt for the rest of their life, feel up, like they made the wrong choice, because essentially their decision to pull the plug ended your life, as in stopped your heart from beating, even though that happened as soon as the third time that you flatlined it within the hour that you were in the ER, you know what I mean? 3 years ago, but they
Yeah.
had to make the decision to pull the plug now. So, but I'm glad you mentioned that. But that's probably one of the hardest things in conversations to have. It's you just recently went through losing a friend, so I don't know when the right time is to like sit down and have that conversation. But as mature adults, like you and your wife, whoever, I'm a mature adult. Like I need to sit down, figure out a good time and space to sit down and have that conversation with my sister, for instance. Like if she's going to be my next of kin, or my daughter, and just give her my guidelines. Like if I'm on life support, I want to take that decision away from them. Those decisions that may weigh on the people that we leave behind
Yeah.
for
Yep.
generations. Or decades. They'll be, again, second guessing their own decision to pull the plug on you, and then have to bury you and essentially put you into the earth.
Yeah. So I'll say this. I made this decision because you just were very articulate in how you explained all that. Because I don't think I've thought about it um, as much as you might think I would. I haven't. But the real-time decision I make right now is that the last thing I want is, if there is no chance for me to have a good life again, and science says that, um, the last thing I would ever want is for my family to lose funding or have less of a quality of life to keep me on a respirator. Like that's my
Yeah.
nightmare. Actually, my nightmare in general is that somehow I do something or I am something that takes away from my kids' ability to thrive. So yeah, like if I get
Yeah.
into a car accident tomorrow,
Yeah.
or like you said, or if I'm 75 and something goes wrong, um, I do not want them spending their money on keeping me there. Like life is tough. Like there's a beginning, middle, and end, whether that's 3 months or 90 years. But an end is inevitable, and that sucks. But
Yeah.
the last thing I want is to be kept around, um, incapacitated. I don't mean like a brain injury or anything like that, because I deal with a lot of clients with brain injuries, and they have wonderful lives and they are so happy, and they are still living great lives. But if it's really like I can't function again, then my goodness, no, do not waste resources on that. Like
Yeah.
let's say goodbye and call it a day, right? Like that's the way I see it. And what you just how you just described it helped me understand that's my decision. But I've
Yeah.
never really had that conversation before. So yeah, no, I think that's where I'm at. How about and are you in the same boat as me?
As far as not wanting to live a life of, well, I mean, again, that's so this is also why we have the open dialogue, right? So
Yeah.
like,
Yep.
just off the cuff, right? Like you do want to discuss when you bring up the topic of conversation, and it should kind of be a one-way conversation, in my opinion. Like I don't want you to tell me, what your opinion is. There'll be questions and answers later, but it's more like you bring up the topic of conversation and say, this is how I want to be handled. When do I want to be, do I want a DNR order, will that be in my will and testament? And again, will and testament will go through, but I'd rather you have the conversation, all of us have the conversation with people that are going to be involved with your will and testament, before it's a time for that documentation to be thrust upon them, so that they're not shocked about anything, or they're not taken aback by a, a, a certain thing that we particularly want. Like if my family is dead set against cremation and I want to be cremated, and all of a sudden that's in my last will and testament, like no, I should have the conversation with them so that it's
I agree.
not
Yeah.
it's not a huge shock to them, and then they're wondering. Well, then they start going into more well, when was that will and testament done? What was the time, date, and stamp? Like when was that done? Because he changed it 2 weeks ago. Like well, anyway, but some other specific things that we should discuss is the thoughts on life saving equipment such as a ventilator again, and then
Yep.
preferences on hospice. That's a
Mhm.
big thing. Do I want to live in a hospice when if I ultimately have Alzheimer's, and I'm not myself mentally, my brain's not functioning properly, I forget things. I don't want to put that responsibility of my kids and my family taking care of me. Like if they deem me go into a hospice, still live a quality life, it's also up to them. And then there's also, we've talked about this before. Like, dang, if I say I don't want to be in a hospice, and now I'm talking about medical or a doctor assisted or medical assisted suicide, like this is I don't want to go into a hospice, just let's induce a medical assisted suicide, and I'll move on from there. But yeah, uh, again, through having these conversations, I think the people that we surround ourselves with are pretty articulate, and to have a conversation about this, you've got to one, trust the individuals that you're having this conversation with, and entrusting with these details. They're fairly articulate too. They can even come up with some questions. For instance, like you just said, you don't you're paralyzed from the waist down, or you're a vegetable and you're paralyzed from the neck down. So even if you are resuscitated or taken off of ventilation, or and your brain's functioning, you have no movement whatsoever from the neck down. We've also had conversations about medical technologies that will assist with that, right? So there's developments that in our space and time right now that are supposed to help individuals that are in that same boat. So that is, I say, if I have no use of my limbs, I don't want to live. No. But one, I would think about, now that I have use of my limbs, I say that I don't, but I still have use of my brain and my eyes and my mouth. Like if my kid had a chance to go to Texas A&M, would I still want to be there in a wheelchair, being pushed, like, and see that moment? And then, after that, maybe if I decide again, a medical suicide or however that works, but like, wouldn't you want to see that? Absolutely. Think of the moments that you would miss. And again, we talked about medical technologies and medical developments, specifically the Neuralink that the Doge and Elon Musk is working on. Like, he's
Mhm.
got people that are quadriplegics living a higher quality of life because that Neuralink has Bluetooth them into all the smart devices that we take for granted
Absolutely.
and use our fingers. And there's other advancements being worked on, currently for that specific system.
No,
But
I think personally two things. If if I'm still functioning here but not here, I still get to make that decision in real time, and that's the good news. So that's kind of like almost a moot point, like because I still get to say this is what I want at that point. To your point, um, if you're not able to function, if you're not able to make a decision for yourself, my decision's easy. Do not, as my I love my family more than I love myself. Do not put yourselves in a situation where your resources are drained, just
yeah,
keeping me alive for no reason. Uh,
yeah,
we've seen science tells you once you're gone, you're gone. And so like especially when you're brain dead, I mean, like there's no coming back from that. Now, if there's a way to jolt that, I don't understand even how technology fixes that because then you're still not the same. You might not remember anything. Like I don't understand that. I do love this idea that you're talking about that it's called the singularity, right? Like where we can have like mini bots, like we talked about this last week or the week before,
yeah,
mini bots like injected and they can diagnose you and possibly even fix you. Like just like that's awesome. I hope my son has that. Like we were born in a weird space
yeah.
where the timeline for us were like probably a little bit too old for that. But I do like that idea. But me personally, yeah, no, my family is why I exist, and your family too. Like, I mean, you and Wally and the kinship we have is incredible. Yeah, I don't want any of that. I don't want anyone like taking away from their own lives to try to keep me alive if there's nothing there up here. Like
Yeah.
that's my thought.
Yeah. So I know we've kind of gone back and forth on a few things, but to again, some key notes that we want to take away from the conversation so far is if we were to put it in order, choose the right time and setting. I don't
Mhm.
know when that time is. Again, you just went through a loss specifically. I don't know if now is the right time. Maybe now is the best time for you specifically to sit down with your wife and
Yeah.
specifically have a conversation about you, and then you let her know, hey, well, we need to come back around to your conversation and your the things that you want and what you want out of this. And then of course we already know, be open and honest, start the conversation, with honesty, and be as open about what your wishes are. And again, we talked about some of the wishes to clearly identify: do not resuscitate, whether you want to be on a ventilator, if you'd like to be in hospice, also if you're an organ donor or not, any specific wishes for your body, how you want that to be handled, the cremation, do you want to be buried in a casket, however that works. And then of course any of your specific preferences and the reasons, you want to explain the reasons behind whatever your preferences are. And then again, the questions and dialogue and discussion can go back and forth, and you and the people that you're talking to, hopefully it's more than one, but the people that you're talking to, you can have again, you just talked about nanobots. We talked about the Neuralink. Like there's constant advancement, stem cell research. Like I feel like right now, paralyzation is not the end all be all. To even now, I feel like with the Neuralink, even though your brain function is gone, your brain function is gone because there's a reason, right? There's no electronic stimulation. I would not be surprised if a Neuralink at some point could restart that electronic engine in your brain and you're fully functioning again, with maybe again some short-term memory loss, sensitivity to light. No, I don't know, but
And
like,
that brings in so many ethical questions, right? And
mm-hmm.
I love that conversation. But what you just said, I want to go back to what you said because you said something I think incredibly important. I don't want to gloss over it. When you explain to somebody what your wishes are, giving them the reason. And
Yeah,
that's so important because like you and I, Nate, we might disagree on something, right? And let's say I go tomorrow and you would rather I make a different choice, but I give you proxy, let's say. Um, if I tell you why I feel this way, you're more likely to follow through because you know you're doing the right thing for me. But if you
yeah,
don't explain the reasons, then it's much more easy for people to start to be like, wait a minute. Well, they said that, but they didn't really think it through, and I'm going to be here for them. So telling someone the reason why is much more likely to get the outcome you were hoping for at the final destination than if you just say something for no reason.
yeah,
So I think that's an important thing that you just said is explaining the reasons why to your closest. Not fun,
yeah,
not a fun conversation, but super important.
yeah, definitely. Yeah, there's again the dialogue back and forth is going to be important as well, because it's probably going to open up your eyes or my eyes or whatever my wishes are. I may actually change a decision, change something, a detail about that, because again, we're having an open dialogue, and I'm a pretty smart guy, but I don't think of everything. I'm not the smartest guy in the room most times, or at least most intelligent. I might be the smartest, but not most intelligent. Like intelligence is wisdom. We can go back and forth on what is the specificity of both of those two things, but like I'm fairly intelligent, but I feel like there's a lot more people that are wiser and more intelligent than me. But common sense was, hey, I'm pretty good at that. But sorry, to not to divert, but
I love
another
it.
thing to think about also is when either before or while we're having these discussions is like, you know, what does my insurance cover? And what are my wishes? Do how long do the if I do want to be resuscitated, how long and what dollar amount will my insurance cover? So financially, what am I, what is the rest of the world, meaning my family, responsible for financially? And also, again, the advancements that we talked about, you could easily call up your insurance company and say, hey, what percentage of experimental things do you cover as far as medical uh, procedures? Like, because again, like if a let's say again you are paralyzed, you're on a respirator because your body hasn't really fully transitioned as far as being able to handle breathing because you're paralyzed. But there's an experimental technology or medical development that's a surgery that could potentially fuse your spine and your nerves back together and you could walk again. But
Oh,
your
great.
insurance company will not cover zero any of it because it's experimental, right? So, like, again, those are the things going in, not necessarily going into this conversation, but before you put everything down or finalize your decisions, these are things that you should probably be doing a little bit of research on and making sure, again, like, yes, this is my wish, but by doing that, I could financially strain the rest of my family pretty heavily just to keep me alive. And like,
And
is
that's
that
what makes this
something that you
podcast
want?
great. We
Yeah.
personalize these conversations, which I think is what makes this particular conversation that we have every week just so good. For me personally, uh, whether or not the technology is 5 years away or whatever, if it's taking away from my kids or my wife, don't do it. Just let it go. Go live your life. All I care about, the most important things to me are that my friends and loved ones are happy. But the most important thing to me is that my immediate family is unburdened by me. My job is to protect them, to care for them, to make sure that they feel um, like they have a future and they can believe in that. So
Yeah.
right now we're in good shape with that, right? Because I'm here, I'm good to go. But if I become a burden, that is my worst nightmare. So that
Yeah.
I do not want to become a burden to my family. So whatever they need to do to move on, go with it. That's my
Yeah.
job. That's my purpose in life.
Yeah.
So I think this conversation is good for a lot of people to think about, like, what do you really want? Like, is survival your first instinct? And trust me, I have a survival instinct for sure, but it's not my first instinct. My first instinct is take care of my family. And then
Yeah.
second instinct, take care of my friends. And then maybe third instinct is survival. And I'm not sure what order you put that in, but I think that's how you make your very serious decisions about the DNR or what you want in a situation where
Yeah.
you can't make a decision for yourself. I don't know. I'm not sure like where you're at.
I mean, I'm a protector first, and then
Yeah.
I'll worry about my well-being after that. But I,
Yeah.
I do have a question for you. When you say you don't want to be a burden on the rest of your family, but use this as an example. Again, I talked about, all right, you're a paraplegic, you're a quadriplegic. Sorry, quadriplegic, no arms, can't use anything from the neck down. Uh, you feel like you're a burden, but again, the sentimental things or the fact that your kids grow up with their father still in a wheelchair but able to see everything that they do, you being there and watching them inspires them. And so when you present this to your loved ones and say, I don't want to be a burden, just you know let's just final destination, I'm ready for that if it comes to that. And they're like, they're your kids. Like, I want you to be there. You are, I would imagine the reception to that, your response from a loved one would be like, no, there's no question. I want you to be here. I don't care if you're in a wheelchair. I don't care if you have no use of all four of your limbs. Like, I want you to be here. I want you to see your kids grow up. I want you to see your grandkids. Like, you're not a burden to us. So, well, again, this is part of the reason why we should have these conversations, because I think there are many people in our circles that would gladly say, like, no, you're not a burden. You can move into my house. Like, I don't know
Yeah.
how I'd imagine, again, well, I guess my question to you is, what would your response be to that if your loved ones are like, quit being silly, Chester Fred Bowen the third. Like your heart's beating, you have use of your brain and your mouth and your eyes, and you can experience the entire world with that. And we want you to be here with us. What would your rebuttal be to that?
Yeah, so that's kind of the definition of burden, right? And when I think burden, I think I have nothing left to offer, and you're just literally holding me up. Um, if they were to say, Dad, it's not a big deal. We know we got this. I think I would cry every single time that they have to take care of me, and I can't take care of myself. But if they really meant it, and I believed that they really meant it, that they were like, we just want you here to witness us. Like I coach
Yeah,
Camden football, or I see Haley in cheer. If they were like, we just really want you there, and like that matters more to us than like the fact that we have to change your colostomy bag or whatever it is.
yeah,
Then I think if I had full use of my brain, I'd be able to make a good choice for myself. So the definition for me of burden is really when, um, and even after that, like maybe they get older, and be like, Dad, we can't go to college because of you. I'd be like, then fucking end it then, right? You know what I mean? Like then that's fine. I'm talking more of like neurologically, there's nothing there. Like, do not take on that burden. I'm
yeah,
offering
yeah,
you nothing, and you're not doing anything special by me by keeping me
yeah,
alive. Because as little as 100 years ago, there was no way that could even happen anyway.
yeah,
But what an excellent question, Nate. Like if I felt like a burden, I would endure that emotional pain if they really needed me there. I
yeah,
would endure that for them if they really meant it. Like,
yeah,
that's the nuance, right? Like, are they doing it for me? Are they
yeah.
doing it for them? And that's a tough one to sort of suss out over time.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I would only you would only accept that burden on an adult that literally tells you, I will change your bedpan,
Yeah, yeah,
give you sponge baths, etc., because you can't do that, but that's also again why we do a little bit of research on our life insurance and like, or our medical insurance. And hey, if I am a quadriplegic, do you guys, no increase in my monthly payment, do you guys fund somebody that is essentially hospice work, but they are a medical professional that will come to your home and be with you daily to assist you? Like, that's a
those are
that's
good
a
questions.
again.
Life insurance is tricky. I mean, I'm not sure
Yeah,
if you have life insurance, and it's probably best for both of us. We don't say what it is, but I have learned so much. I had a presentation today at my work, and there's certain things that happen that are so cutthroat. Like, um, if someone has like, let's say that they're overweight, not even obese, but just
yeah,
overweight, and maybe they take uphill and they're 35. They can get life insurance for 20 years. But to your point, they will not cover you if something catastrophic happens to you. They won't cover it because you have that one pill, and uh
yeah,
and you're slightly overweight. Like I actually think I'm overweight right now, like by like 5 pounds or something. That's crazy to me. Um, and so when I look at that, it's a really great question to ask, because if you're like,
mm,
I'm gonna get life insurance, this is what's gonna happen. And if my life insurance doesn't cover that, who does that burden fall upon?
yeah,
It makes sense to ask that question. But like again, this presentation today was heartbreaking for me to see like all these different outcomes for people that none of them are usually good. Insurance is built on this idea that you pay them a lot of money and they don't have to pay out as much back.
yeah,
So, I again, it's kind of funny that today we had this presentation.
yeah. No, it's definitely, again, when we're talking about this and ourselves, it's definitely something that do a little bit of research on. And again, it should only be a phone call away. It shouldn't be. They might actually refer you to your contract, but however, why don't you just do me a solid and I'm going to stay on the line until you answer my questions or transfer me to somebody else. Those are things that I need to do too. And again, we talked about not just documenting your wishes, but also circle back on this conversation. If you have this conversation, the more you have these conversations and this same conversation, the easier it is will be to bring it up, and the easier it will be to, when your kids are of age, sit them down and have the same conversation. And then we're building a cycle, right? We're preparing our kids for our final destination, and then when they get into relationships with other people, they might have a conversation about them with them about, hey, and it might be just about their parents, right? Like my parents have said, this is how that. Have you had that conversation with your parents? And then again, we're continuing to cycle through these things and make sure that, again, this conversation shouldn't be hard. The easier it is to have the conversation, I feel like the easier it will be to handle the inevitable when it happens, because we've prepared ourselves for this moment. No one likes it. No one wanted it to come, but it's coming. It's coming.
So that's a good point you make too. So from a cultural standpoint, I have a personal question for you after, if you're okay answering. But from a cultural standpoint, this country in particular hides death more than most.
Yeah.
Like we find ways to like if I die, I will say this out loud right now. If I die, I'd like to die at home. My grandfather died. He was holding on and holding on and holding on. And I remember saying to my dad, like, this guy's really tough. It's over. I think he just wants to go home. And when I told my dad that, he got an ambulance, and I think we paid privately for it or whatever. Not me, I didn't pay for it. I was a college student and poor. But when he went home, it was like not that long after that he like finally passed. And I don't know what that means or spiritually what that means, but I just felt it as a 25-year-old. Like he needs to go home. He does not want this to be his end. And for me, I'd want to have my end at home as well. So I do think there's something to say for that too. Like where do you end? Like you don't really want to end in a hospital room. And again, if it's a car accident or if it's something tragic and sudden,
Yeah.
you don't get that choice. But if you have that choice, you can do that. But to you, if is your medical proxy or if you were to choose one, the assumption I have is that it would be Melissa, but who would it be?
I mean, since I live here in Texas, it would probably be my daughter, honestly. Like,
Okay.
as long as she's okay with that.
Well, that's
I
why it's
mean,
so
if not,
important.
if not, then it would be my sister, or at least, medical would probably still be my daughter or somebody, whoever I would write down as a first, contact in case of an emergency, like which would be my daughter probably. But my next of kin would be, obviously next notified would be my sister, and then, but unless she moves closer, that could change that. But
Huh.
yeah,
I get that. Well, that tells me why it's so important to you because you care so much for your daughter that you want to make sure that she has a roadmap. If she's
yeah,
going to be your proxy, that makes sense to me why it's so important to you. You want to make sure that she
yeah,
has a clear roadmap,
yeah,
so that she doesn't feel. We all want this for our loved ones. We don't want them to feel pain. I mean, they're
yeah,
going to, but we want to make sure that ahead of time we minimize the pain as much as we possibly can. So that makes that answer to me makes perfect sense as to why this is the subject for you tonight.
yeah.
You're a
Well,
good man.
also logically, you said your first instinct was, I don't want to burden anyone.
Yeah.
If we don't have this conversation and talk about these things, again, we are inadvertently burdening them with making the decisions without being informed,
Yep.
without knowing, just a guess, just a whim. Like, let's keep them on life support for the next 3 years. Like, and then again, they visit you every day for 3 years and see you like that. So it's heartbreaking for them to make the decision to pull the plug. But if you take that decision away from them, you take that sorrow, that pain, that anguish, that guilt that they would feel if they felt like they were the ones making that decision because they were uninformed on what you wanted. So again,
That makes
taking
sense.
that burden away, not wanting to burden our family, Chet, as you've said many times. Like, I don't want
Yeah.
to be a burden. Have these
Well, that reminds
conversations.
me of what was that commercial? Like it was, I think it was Guinness or something, where someone said what you just said. I just want to go brilliant, like whatever, like what you just said. It reminds me of
It
that
was a
commercial.
Guinness commercial. The guy with the mustache was just
Yeah,
brilliant.
brilliant. Yeah.
Having serving hamburgers at a bar, brilliant. Yeah, that was a good commercial. I love that.
No, but
Uh,
I hope if anyone else watches this, like regardless of what we talk about going forward, like I really do hope they stop and think because like you actually helped me make a decision in real time just by saying it out loud. Because it's not a conversation most people love to have, right?
yeah,
For
yeah,
obvious reasons. So
yeah.
yeah.
I mean, again, the older we get, the more we should think I should have had this conversation years ago, and the more people we lose, and also understand through the loss the burden that they've left their family with, or and again, unintended burdens, right? Like, you could have asked that person while they were alive, and they're just like you. I don't want to burden anyone. If it's my time, it's my time. And it's like, you know, if you don't have these conversations, you are inadvertently burdening them with making the decisions without any source of knowledge on hand. Just again, they have the burden and the guilt of making those decisions, those tough decisions, and take those decisions away. There was something else that I wanted to hit on. Dang it.
You talked about life-saving equipment and a couple other things that you wanted to talk about just in general.
It was circling back to something that you had said, and dang it. I'll think
A lot
about
of
it.
great things, Nate.
You do say a lot of great things. I don't deny that. I don't deny that. You do. There is a book that I have not read. I intend to read it. Uh, I did some research, used some snippets from the book specifically, but it is called "Being Mortal" by Atul
Oh,
Gawande.
yep. I've read
Uh,
that book.
you have?
Yep.
Okay. Well,
Yep.
you should have been educated. You should have already followed his plan, man. Because
So,
his plan was basically the same thing that I had, but I only had that after. I've listened to a few podcasts, but I'm not going to shout out anybody. But I wanted to look at some literature, and this book on Goodreads, "Being Mortal," by Atula Gwande, it had 4.4.5 stars out of 5, over 204,000 ratings,
yep.
which is pretty impressive.
I think that book is so good, but it also speaks to real friendship and trust, right? I read
Yeah.
this book by someone I've never met, by someone I don't know, and they make every single good point in the whole world. I don't know that person. I don't I don't necessarily understand why they wrote this book. Sadly, not sadly, but like we are a capitalist country, so like okay, maybe it's sold well. But when I hear you make that point, it speaks to me differently. It hits different. Does that make sense?
Yes, absolutely.
So that's what I mean. Like that book is incredible, and I would encourage everyone to read it. But it still won't really get to you until you have someone that you really trust and that you love, like have that conversation with, right?
Yeah.
Like, yeah,
So going back to the thought that I forgot about, and now I've come back to it full circle. You had said, you had described how you essentially, if we could ask everybody how they want to die, probably the top two answers is suddenly,
yeah,
or at an old age in my sleep.
yep,
Those are probably the top two. And like, that probably only happens to, you know, I I could probably ask Google right now. Wally would hate me for it, but I'd probably say only 10% of Americans actually pass away in that manner. Like maybe 25%. I probably go 25 because anybody that dies in a car accident, that's suddenly any kind of accident. So we could probably say 25%. And then between dying suddenly in an accident per se, and then also dying in our sleep at an old age, passing away peacefully. Those would probably be two of the ways that people want to pass away. But again, if you do pass away suddenly, there are still some things that are left to be able to bring you to your final destination, bring you to burial, however that works. But we did hit on cultural perspective, and that I think that's an important thing as well. You know, that is also why we have these conversations. We do live in America, and there are people that are Muslim that get married to people that are particularly of a Christianity faith. Like, so having those conversations it's definitely, I feel like there's nothing bad that can happen about it. And it almost speaks to how articulate and how caring you are as an individual when you have these conversations about your death with people that you love.
Yeah, so the cultural thing, I will say this. I'm no expert, but I've done a decent amount of research. I would say I'm like medium in understanding it. But so where I work, downstairs, there's the Nation of Islam. And they'll sometimes literally they do funerals there. And
Mm-hmm.
so the body of the person is wide open. So they take it out of the in a large parking lot, public parking lot. The body is just there and they bring it in. And part of me that appreciates that is like in America, we're so competitive. Everybody has to win. And it almost feels like when you die, you lose, and then we hide it.
Yeah.
Whereas, like in that culture, you know that when you die, you're going to be respected. You're going to be out there. You're going to be paraded in, and there's going to be a lot of people around you saying a prayer or whatever it is that they do, to respect you in your final days, whatever that was. Um, and so, to me, I do think that those cultural differences say a lot about how we feel about death and what it means. Like when we talk about it, we're under the like, look at what I said. I just don't want them to have a financial burden because of me.
Yeah.
That's kind of sad if you think about it, right? Like it's a little sad. And so I see these other cultures and they do it in a certain way that I admire, where they don't hide death. And um, there's a consequence to that for the living. If the living see like this is what happens when the end happens, right? This is what happens, then you can sort of live a little bit more freely. Whereas what you're saying is like we have so many decisions to make before we go in this culture. We have to say like, do we want you to spend the money? Do we want to burden you? If this particular situation happens, this is what I want. But if this one happens, it's a little different. And it's a lot. It's more complicated here than in most places. Again, because we hide it, and I do feel like in this culture, and I love America. Like I'm a born and bred, love America, but I will say that I do think this idea that you win, 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 it almost leads to death as a failure, which is it certainly influences how we handle death and what we do, which is
Yeah.
why this conversation that you brought up is so important.
Yeah. No, I guess I would also say because of our culture, right? Like, uh, again, I want to Google it. I'm hesitant because Wally doesn't like it, but what percentage of Americans have life insurance? Life insurance in general is something that, you know, we as Americans, and I'm sure other nations as well, it's something, it's a very
Oh,
lucrative
hey,
business, right? So
can we take a quick timeout? Because you should see this. This is insane. This is on a live podcast.
what's up?
I'm just kidding. It's not a live podcast. It's not a live podcast. I thought that you guys had. That's what you
Is
guys.
this is this is this hairstyles for competition tomorrow, or
No, they're just being nuts.
just just
That's what they're
school?
doing.
Dreads. We changed my curtains too.
Huh?
We changed my curtains.
You changed your curtains?
Yeah.
Hey, excellent. Good work. Hey,
Change curtains. Hey,
That's
you
a-
need to. I
that's
think Chet needs some curtains down there too. Nice. I like
I
the
do need
braids.
to not here.
I've been thinking about getting some extensions and braiding my own hair at some point. What do you think?
It's done.
All right. Good night, girls.
Nice work.
I'll be
Nice
pouring more
work,
coffee
ladies.
tonight, okay?
Looks good.
All right. That was actually
That's
almost
cool.
perfect timing.
That was. Yeah, that's cool. Yeah, so our cultural differences, right? Like I feel like what spurns some of those decisions is we have life insurance. So like, oh, if I die, I've got a million and a half in life insurance that my family's going to get. Well, wouldn't it be nice if I could just save them again the burden of making the decisions, lay out the plan for them already, and they get the $1.5 million. I don't have a $1.5 million life insurance policy. I think somebody would probably be trying to kill me right now if I did, but half a million, I do half a million. That's a good chunk of change for my family. Like they'll be
Yep.
happy to see that. It'll probably
Yep.
all be spent in one day, but I hope they double down and like, bet on black or something at
No. And we have friends that when their parents passed, and Sabrina and I are similar. Like we have nothing. We have no our parents did not do anything to ensure that we are financially better after. And I get it. Like it's what a hard thing to think about. Like your demise is not an easy thing to think about. So I totally get it. No judgment there. But I do think about it. And so I have
Yeah.
friends that their parents did think about it, and I'm watching what's happening to them in their own lives afterwards. And they're like, their lifestyles have changed. They're able to get like you've been to my house. You know how much I would love to have a pool outside? Like
Yeah.
I can't do that right now. Um,
Yeah.
I'm not crying poor by any means, but I'm saying like there are certain things I could never do. But like if my parents were like, if my mom, for instance, was like, hey, I want to get this life insurance and I want to do this, then that would have been so fantastic. And so in my mind, my thought is when I go, the plan would be pay off the house, right? Pay off the house first
Yeah.
and foremost, so you always have a place to live and you're never worried, other than the taxes and whatever they are. Problem with that, of course, and I don't mean to go off track, but this is something that really does bother me. Is the problem with that is they can pay off the house, and then there's still like this policy where they can claw it back, right? It's like a system where like they don't get to just keep this house. Then there's all this like hoops they have to go through, even with my life insurance, and they can pay off the house. There's so many hoops they have to go through to keep the house. And when you live in a place for a long time and you build memories with your family, I think if you pay it off, it's different if you can't pay it off. But if you pay it off, you should be able to call that home for your family forever.
Yeah.
And right now, that doesn't seem to be the case, and that really does suck.
Yeah. Well, again, this is stuff that you can make sure is in your will and testament, and also you talk to them about it. And like you can change the way if you do have a life insurance policy, you can change the way it's dispersed. It can be I know most of us know it can be lump sum. You can do it over so many years or installments. You can change the number of people that are benefactors of that. That way it divvies up certain dollar amounts. Yeah, you can change all that. And then, it's within your will and testament. You only get you're assigned this dollar amount in my life insurance, but this dollar amount will go to, whatever. It could go into a robust savings account until you're 18 or 24 or 27, something to that effect. But like,
Gotcha.
you make that final decision yourself. So yeah, uh it's a hard thing to talk about. Again, it's not an easy conversation, but the more we have the conversation, again, if you have the conversation with your significant others, and then you're watching the news with them one day and there's a medical advancement that changes your mind, and you're like, oh, remember how I think I'm thinking about changing that. What do you think? And it seems like more like casual conversation. And like, again, we all know this is coming 100%. That it's going to happen. We don't know when. Hopefully, again, it's at an old age and in our sleep, and we go peacefully,
Great.
but yeah, it's going to happen. So having these conversations again sooner rather than later makes it easier to revisit the conversation, makes it easier to make slight adjustments if you need to. But you brought up a topic before we went live, or excuse me,
Yeah.
before we started recording, about how you handled your mom's passing. And would you want to talk about that now,
Sure.
or
Yeah.
yeah?
So
Good.
you and I have our friendship has always been built around this. I think even when we were like driving to high school together, we always were sort of comfortable in this space. Who knows why? I don't know what that means, but we've always been comfortable there. Yeah, my mom, she passed and um there was nothing left behind except for a lot of student debt. And I wasn't really super concerned about that at the time. But I just saw that she had no plan and she was there. And then literally, I think I got a call from my sister. No, I know. I was sitting in my office, got a call from my sister, mom's in the hospital, and I don't know why, but I knew, right? I was like, this is
Yeah.
it. And so I go there and I could tell she didn't look great. And then that night, it didn't take them long. She was diagnosed with stomach cancer because she had sort of let it fester for a long time without ever doing anything about it. So she lived day to day and good for her, I guess, in that way. But there was zero plan. So then my sister has been suffering significantly because there was no plan. She had to sort of, and I tried, I tried, right? My brother too tried, but the best I could do for them without actual resources is just like giving them the best advice I can and saying, give this a shot, connecting them with whatever resources I did have. And it didn't work out well because there was no plan. That's a really sad way for it to go.
Yeah.
Uh, and so I don't think my mom ever worried about me per se. Like I think she always knew I'd figure my own life out. Like that's just what I do. But for those two, man, tough. And I know this is recorded, and that's okay. They would both agree, probably. It was
Yeah.
really tough for them to go through this, and so lesson learned on that. So yeah, no, and my dad I think has a much better plan. I don't know that he has all the details that you're talking about sort of ironed out, but he's got a sounds like he has a better plan as far as like what he wants at the
Yeah.
end, and as far as how he wants the resources to be sort of disseminated.
Yeah.
He seems to be in better shape. He's more astute in that way
Yeah.
to that
Yeah.
kind of thing.
Well,
So, yeah.
well, I mean, again, putting what his ideas are,
Yep.
not only down on paper but in your head, so that again, I I need to have this conversation with my mom. So I'm spitballing here as far as I'm saying what you should do, but I'm not doing what I'm saying. So
That's fair.
what
That's
we
fair.
both need to do, and especially with your dad, is, and how do you, easy way to start the conversation is like, look, with mom, this happened, and it broke my heart. It really broke my heart. I didn't know how to handle it, but I want to make sure that we get things right with you. And like, what do we do? What in this case, in this, you can initiate that, and then maybe it'll open him up to that. And like,
I
and
think it would.
again,
I think it would.
yeah, and I don't know when, even if I was at his age, if I'd be comfortable with talking about my death. I don't know, but like, you can feel out that conversation. But I guarantee you, if my kids come to me and tell me I care about this stuff, I want to make sure it's done right, it's going to happen whether we all want it to or not. There'll be a lot of pain and a lot of sorrow, but what can we do to take the decision making out of the process, and we just deal with the grief, deal with the celebration of life, however you want that. Like, what do you want? What are your wishes? Do you want us all to grieve for 24, 48 hours or
No,
24, 48
I
days?
I
Like,
should give my dad credit for this. I really should like right here on record. Like, don't post this until way later. But um, he has tried to talk to me about these things, but when he did, I was like 20 something, and I was like, Dad, I can't think about you dying. Like, I can't think about that. So I kind of shut him off, I think.
yeah,
Even to this day, he'll still mention something here or there where I think he wants to plan. And it's hard for me emotionally. So then I think I say something, but I also think I'm showing him love by saying that's never going to happen,
Yeah.
right? Although the
Yeah.
truth is, we all know it will at some point. So this conversation for me, I am actually inspired. I'm going to actually make a phone call and be like, hey dad, I'm ready to talk about this. Like, what do you want? Because I think ultimately he wants to tell me what he wants. And I think he knows I'm the only one that would
Yeah.
actually execute it properly. And
Yeah.
I just haven't been ready or I haven't been open to it. But yeah, I will actually give him I mean, not tonight. Jesus Christ. The last thing
Yeah.
we want to do is call him, after a bunch of drinks and talk about this. But when I'm completely salient, I think I will give him a call and have this conversation.
Yeah. That's a
Makes
great
sense.
word. A great use of that word, salient. I like that. There's,
Thanks.
yeah, I mean, again, to initiate the conversation is probably will be tough, but I mean, let's look at it from a position of respect,
Yeah.
like, hey, I feel like you've tried to have this conversation with me several times and I haven't been mature about it. Now I'm of age. I've got kids of my own. I'm ready to revisit this conversation when
Yeah.
you want to bring it up. And then you just leave it in his,
Hey,
and
can
you
I
could
fly
even
you
ask,
up?
"Are you ready right now? Are you ready right now? I got about 2 hours now."
I know that out of the two of us, you're the military guy and I'm the mental health guy, but in that situation specifically, can I fly you up to be the mental health guy
Sure,
for
yeah,
us?
sure.
It would be
I
great.
probably to go back to the question that you asked earlier about how I handle death. Like there is something to be said about going into a situation and like shedding your fear of death and
Yeah.
like changing your perspective on it's not about whether I live or die. Of course, I don't want to die, but I'm not fearful of that death. I can't take every step moving forward fearful of death because that is going to hurt the team, right? It's going to hurt my teammates. It's going to hurt everybody around me and it's going to change my focus. So I need to be focused on the moment. I need to be ready to do whatever I need to do when the situation arises. And I can't be fearful of death. I need to react to things as I see it and as I can. And yeah, so that's another reason why like I guess see death differently when it comes to how you handle it. And I understand wholeheartedly how it's difficult for somebody to do that. Especially if you haven't been put in that, again, I signed on the dotted line. I volunteered to go and deploy on deployments, multiple deployments. I've been doing that. So, like, I guess that's to put it in perspective. Like, I didn't just do that in one instance. I did that day in and day out for several, months and on several different continents. So it was just a different perspective. So,
Well,
to understand.
you faced the concept way earlier than me. So the first time I can remember ever thinking about death, ever, was I was in my uh not apartment. I was in my room and I was in high school and I was looking at the sky and I was listening to Dave Matthews Band or something. No, definitely Dave Matthews Band. And they said, look up at the sky. There's this song they do. And I looked up and I was like, holy shit. There was like this moment like, I'm gonna die one day. And it was like this fucked up moment. Then of course, you just bury it deep down, right? And I was able to bury it deep down to my junior year in college when I had to actually intellectually process it. But you signing on dotted line at 18, 17 actually, when you signed, it put you in a position where you had to consider that concept in a different way than I had to, for sure. Which is why I think you're able to see it in such a mature way, unlike a lot of your friends, maybe, or even me. Um, and that's long term speaking, probably a good thing. At the short term, at that time, probably tough for you.
Yeah, but I mean, again, when you look at it on a smaller scale, right? Like, take away the fact, take away not in a foreign country, take away no weapon in your hands. Like, you can put yourself in that situation for your family almost
Yeah.
on the daily. Shed your fear of it when if you put yourself in the protector role, no matter when that is, if it's just in theory, right? Like I don't have to actually. I'm going through the motions of putting myself in protector mode, looking for exits, looking for people that could be potential threats while we're in a crowded environment. Like, when you put yourself in that role, essentially you're doing the same thing. You're shedding yourself of fear. You're going to react to save others instead of reacting to save your own life, and then everyone else can fend for themselves. Like, so
Yeah.
if you put it in that kind of perspective, then again the whole intrinsically, like, and personally, like, your death specifically is a kind of an afterthought,
It's
right?
like secondary. Yeah, I get what you're saying.
Yeah.
But you had to do that well before you had offspring or even someone vulnerable. So you had your teammates by your side, right? And
Yeah.
you all counted on each other, I think. I mean, I can't speak for you, but like you're all sort of young, you're the same age, and you have to count on each other and you had to build that trust. And
Yeah.
that's incredible what you all did. Um, so you put yourself in the protector role, the guy to your right and the guy to your left. Where it took someone like me, I won't speak for anybody else, but for me, that protector, like I was always empathetic. There's a reason I went into counseling and mental health, right? Always empathetic. But that protector role, the one you're talking about, where you put yourself, your own safety secondary or third or fourth, happened when Haley walked in. I dated a girl a long time ago when she had a kid, and like I could tell, like, I'm like, something's not right. I'm not ready for this. Because I couldn't get into that protector role yet.
Yeah.
When Haley walked in the door with Sabrina, then I was like, oh. And then it changed everything almost overnight. But you had to do that like literally 15 years before me. There's something to be said for that. You should be proud of that.
Yeah, it's a lot easier when you're surrounded by like-minded individuals, and they're doing, their mindset is the same. We're not, no one of us is communicating it, but their mindset's the same. So it's a lot
Yeah.
easier to do it in that, but to put yourself in the protector role for your family, like, you're the
Easy.
only one. Like, you want
Yeah.
them to survive, and you'll put your life on the line to do that, and they don't need to do anything else. Like, yeah. So,
They just exist
uh,
and you protect them, right? It's like
yeah,
so different than what you went through. So, man,
absolutely. Yeah.
thank you for
Any
that, by the way.
yeah, final thoughts. What are your final thoughts on our final destination?
Just that this conversation's inspired me quite a bit to have some conversations with some loved ones. And you're the first one that's actually pushed me to do that. So I appreciate
Yeah.
you for that because I think it makes sense. I'm going to do it. It's not easy, but it makes a lot of sense. Everything you said. What are your final thoughts?
I mean, my final thoughts are very much like yours. I need again. I said earlier, like, I'm telling you what you need to do, but I myself am not even doing it. So I do need to do that with my family. I need to have those conversations. I don't even have a last will and testament.
You do.
Part of my ignorance is I feel healthy. I feel like I've lived, hopefully half of my life. Hopefully I'm not there yet. Hopefully I'm not at half life, and I still got many years to go. But I know that I need to have those conversations. And again, the easier those conversations will become easier the more that we do them. And
I
the
agree.
first initiation of the conversation will be difficult, but you know, again, we can revisit them. We do it casually, get it documented, and then again, we're creating a cycle. We revisit the conversation when our kids are of age and we feel like they can handle those conversations, and then there again, we revisit the conversation when something changes. We have more dialogue on the topic, because again, death, it's coming for us, and we want to release burden of making decisions by our loved ones on our behalf by giving them the information. Give them the answers to the test, and it'll make it a lot easier. They won't have they'll We can be laid to rest knowing that we haven't burdened our loved ones by making them make decisions in the absence of us giving them the information.
And you're doing a great job, by the way, just by bringing this up. This is all you, um, helping to remove the stigma.
Yeah.
even for me personally. Because like I said, like I will now be able to talk to my dad and be like, hey, dad, my bad. Like, you see it, I didn't see it, my
Yeah.
bad. I think that's helpful. And I think removing the stigma is an important thing so you can actually make legitimate plans that have some logic to them that are helpful for everyone around you as opposed to being a burden on the way out. So, dude,
Yeah.
applause to you, first of all.
Yeah. Appreciate it. Thank you. I've been wanting to have this conversation for a while.
Yeah.
And again, it's going to motivate me to have the conversation with my loved ones as well.
And
Like,
let's do it
like,
again. Let's do it again with Bali and Jose and Tim, or because Tim is going to have a whole spiritual side to it that we didn't
yeah,
that you and I are not connected
yeah,
to, that he'll bring in that might provide some insight for us. Like it's always good. So yeah, I love
no,
that.
yeah, yeah. I
Do we
think it
have
was
anything
more.
else to docket tonight?
We'll talk some sports, but
Oh, man.
one final thought is that I think we're both. I think this became a little bit more personal just because it is you and me
Yeah, yeah.
talking, and we're kind of forced to listen, not no distractions, no other conversations. So, not to say that those are bad things, but like if I'm talking, necessarily not everyone is listening at the same time unless I'm talking to you. So, yeah, I think it's a little bit more personal because it's smaller and it probably hit home with both of us because something again, I'm talking about a lot of good things, but I am not doing them.
Well, this conversation reminds me of like no joke. I tend to go back to before we knew anything and we were just kids. The 1979 LTD I had picking you up for high school. It reminds me of a conversation we would have had back then. Like we're just driving in and talking about anything without any care in the world.
Yeah, man.
We're the similarity between then and now is just the pure honesty. And I
Yeah,
and I love that. I do
yeah.
love that.
It's great. It's great. Yeah, I love it too. And I miss the LTD. But let's take a little break. I'll edit out the pause, but let's take a little break and
Yeah, go get a drink. I'll get one
I'll get
too.
a little refill.
Perfect.
All right, we'll take a quick break to get a drink and then come back. Uh-oh.
I'm here.
Oh, you're there. I thought you were
Yeah.
frozen. It looked like you were walking away from the camera and you were frozen.
No, actually, I was just
Or I
texting.
was frozen.
I'm not. I think you saw the post when Cameron found out he's going to the Drake May thing. I think you commented or liked it or something. And so one of Cameron's coaches just sent me a Facebook Messenger like, "That's amazing, man." And I was like, "Yeah." And Cameron, we have this one coach who uh, we can edit this out, but I think it's wonderful. Like I'm more of like I coach the flag team.
Yeah.
So I'm a skill position coach because, as you know, I used to play quarterback back in the day. Like we're out in the parking lot or on the field, and that's what I would do. And I wish I had a coach. Wish I had a coach that could like help all of us like find a way to play for real, right? Like in tackle.
Yeah.
So I don't have any business coaching tackle, but with flag, I can still, coach the skill positions. So I coach Cameron, obviously. I know how to throw the ball. Um, I know how to place the ball in a certain way. I know how to drop a dime or like zip it in. I know those things. So I can teach him that. But this guy, Tommy, he is so good at just like that raw talent, the raw aggression. Like if you want to play tackle football, this is what you do. But he teaches the kids really well, but he also like they have to earn it. Like he will yell at you and scream at you. Cameron too. But then when Cameron does something well, he's like, "That a boy." I can tell on the field. Every single kid wants that from that coach. That's a good coach, right? Because you have to
Yeah.
earn it to get it. Whereas I'm more like the emotional maturity, like, okay, so 5 seconds. This play, 5 seconds. Now you can go to the next play. That's more me. Where that guy is like, he will rip into you, but he'll also give you credit. Like he's a perfect coach, honestly. He's not even
Yeah.
the head coach is really good too, but like from his mind. But this guy Tommy is the emotional head coach of the team for sure.
That's cool. That's awesome.
Yeah.
I like that.
Sorry,
I
that was
like
just
it.
off track because I went to
No,
tech.
you're good. No, I
But
like talking coaching. Football is something that I've wanted to get involved with, whether it's flag or tackle, but just coaching in general, just based off of, I don't know. I feel like I have a lot to offer young men specifically on like what it takes to, you know, sacrifice your body, your well-being for the team specifically. Not that anyone, again, no one steps inside the field, the lines on the field and wants to get injured or they don't want to be the sacrifice, but like they want to put themselves on the line and like, again, determination, grit. Like I feel like I could offer some young men, a little bit of insight on what it takes to be successful in sports, but also in life. Like,
you can.
and I think we've always had for our from our my perspective on coaches that we had growing up. Like Jim was very he was kind of borderline as far as like he probably showed me more than any coach that I had on what we always talk about. The things that you're doing now translate in life, like they're life lessons. Like I didn't really understand what that was, and like Jim kind of articulated it just a little bit more to where it resonated and I understood it. Fred might have been also. I was too young. If I'd have stayed in baseball and been around him more as I got older, I think Fred probably would have been a better example of that. But like I didn't really have anybody telling me what these like what how is this suicide that I'm doing right now a life lesson for me? Like and if somebody would have just said plain simple English, you don't want to do it, right? That is life. That is life right there. You're
That's
going to do a lot of things that you don't want to do. And because you have the determination and the grit and the thought process that I don't want to do this, but I'm still doing it, that it's beneficial to you. Like that seems like a simple way to explain it to
Or
me.
even like
But
even being the guy. So that makes sense, but also being the guy like you're gonna take two foul shots. If you miss one, the whole team does suicides. Like that is fucking brilliant because it
yeah,
puts you
yeah,
on the spot because like that's like okay, there's no crowd, there's nothing there. So I didn't get to learn those lessons from Fred or Jim, and it's no fault of their own. I just
Yeah.
couldn't hear them at that time. But I
Yeah.
hear them loudly now. Like when you're saying this, I don't remember them ever saying that to me. I remember always being like, they hate me, they will never like me, and that's all like my own personal stuff. Looking back at it now and seeing how many people love both of those coaches, I can appreciate what
Yeah.
they did for the kids. What I also want to do at some point in this podcast, um, if we had a football team, like let's say sophomore and above,
Hmm.
starting lineup. And I'm gonna fight, by the way, emotionally that I should be a quarterback because I was really good at that. And it pissed me
Yeah.
off because the one sport I could have really excelled at, we didn't have. That makes me
Yeah.
so mad to not to this day necessarily because I'm feeling great, but where I'm
Yeah.
at. But like, man, I remember going out with
Yeah.
you, the soccer coach Stimson, I think his name was.
Yeah.
We would go out and play flag football in gym, and he's like, if Chet, like you are not that great at soccer, but like if we had a football team, you would you literally be like the starting quarterback for the football team. You're hitting these guys in the chest. They're not catching it, but you're hitting
Yeah.
these guys in the chest on every throw. And I'm like, that to me, I was like, okay, so that football in the parking lot, in the trailer park, the parking lot, like hitting people, like learning how to play, and like it
Yeah.
all paid off. But it just sucks that we never had one. So just like,
Yeah.
for fun. And then
For
my son
fun.
gets to actually
Well,
live it.
I'll let you handle the offense. I will say I could only pick a couple on defense just because when we talk about defense and you talk about let's just talk about having a fist fight when you're a kid. Like
Yeah.
once you go through the initial fist fight and you kind of understand like, oh wow, I just got punched in the face. I feared it my entire life, but it really wasn't that bad. Like I feel like tackle football and putting yourself in a position to where
But it's
you initiate contact, it's the same thing. Like there's a certain individual that will excel and there's others that you have no idea what they will do in that situation,
and then
right?
crumble. Yep.
And well, I'm looking at it on the other side, like the quiet person that is
Oh,
a big dude, and they're like, for all intents and purposes, they're like Lenny
mhm.
from what's the name of that
Uh,
movie
of ghosts
book?
and of something in mice and men.
Mice and Men, yeah, Lenny from Of Mice and Men, just a big, strong dude, and there's some screws loose, or they're still an adolescent, they're not yet an adult, so they haven't fully developed their brain function, and they like they just you put them uniform on them, and you introduce them to a contact sport, and like they excel at that because they're so strong and because they have no fear. Maybe that's due to ignorance, just like most kids when they're introduced to a combat sport or like a contact sport. But like, you don't know any better, so you just go out and do it, and like your ignorance is bliss. So I I
Yes,
could
I agree.
I would put I would want to be a linebacker. I think people like Pete Kimball would be a great linebacker or a safety. Uh, Somebody like Wally, again, another linebacker, or maybe even an end, a D end. When we talk about cornerbacks, I'd love to see Tim as a cornerback just because he's fast. Tim, Chad, pretty much anybody that played soccer at a high level that, the footwork can transition a
Absolutely.
bit more. But we also need a kicker. So maybe Chad's our kicker and our cornerback. I think
Who's our
Chad
free
had a pretty
safety?
good leg. Huh?
Who's our free safety? Because I have a hard time with like everything you just said, which believe it or not, is exactly what I would have said, which is fucking awesome, which I love that.
Yeah.
Like who's our free safety? Like we're in a situation where it's gonna be a long pass, we're gonna blitz, but we count on one guy to knock it down. Who would that guy be? Because that I can't figure that out. I want to think
I
Sean.
might even say Justin Woods. He was
No,
quick, man.
Justin's got to be on the front line. He's gonna fuck shit up.
I want beefy dudes. He's quick. I want him to be if he's a free safety, then he can also act as an outside linebacker and depending on the scheme, be
Yeah,
an
no,
edge rusher.
he'd be great as like we fake the blitz, but we drop him back into coverage. He'd be great at that. But like free safety's got to be a guy who can like he could run 20 yards in 2 seconds because he reads the play and sees where the ball's going.
Yeah.
And so I think like even track Sean something. He was so good.
Yeah. Well, I think I would actually free safety. I would take Brian Caruso.
No shit. Was he
Yep.
that fast?
He was fast enough. He had good closing speed, and he had a good vertical. He was,
But
so I'm thinking like catch radius slash, able to, close the distance and cover a lot of ground with his reach and
because
his
he can also
vertical.
read the play. If he sees a quarterback drop back and he watches their eyes from free safety and we're blitzing, he
Yeah.
would know he would get a jump on the throw. He was
Yeah.
really smart. Okay, I like that. I like that pick. All right. All right, Brian Caruso. I like that. So Brian Caruso, free safety. Everything else you said, I agree with. That's good stuff. You as a linebacker, a middle linebacker especially, or just out of nowhere, we put you on the edge to do a
Yeah.
rush.
I'd want to play both ways though. I'd want to
Well,
play both
that's
ways.
how high school works. Like all the people we just said would also have to play on the other side. If I was on defense, I would probably be only in situations where you need two free safeties. I'd probably be the other free safety. Otherwise, I'd have no value. But like two free safeties, I'd probably go there. And then offense, obviously, I think myself quarterback. Like I think I can read a defense. I'm like, okay, they're blitzing, or okay, I can see their body language. Um, Center would be not Chris Decado, like my Chris Decado. Remember the other guy, the super
Yeah.
crawl.
The car guy.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that
Yeah. Yeah. He's
center. Like he's
yeah.
he's stopping he's stopping the guy in front of him, and at least whatever we decide to do, he's stopping the other guy too. Like he would be incredible with that. And then I
I
see
could see
running
him
back
as a nose tackle or a DT, a defensive tackle as well.
easy. Yep, easy. I see Owen Parento or probably Owen Parento as a running back because he was small. He was like a Dion Lewis type,
Yeah.
like shifty. And then I see
Good
Tim.
hands. He had good hands too.
He
Yeah.
had great hands. I see Tim as like like an X. Like in high school, you never throw that far, but he threatens you because he's faster than you. He's more athletic than you. And so if I saw him and he actually got open, I could throw it to him. But I see slot receiver as I had this whole thing in my head. Your tight end, you and all your tight ends. Like you're like forgive me for saying the name.
Aaron Hernandez, Rob Gronkowski. I'll take
Yep.
that.
Thank you.
Yeah.
That's you guys, right? So you guys do that. And then we got a guard.
He's Gronkowski, by the way. I'm Aaron Hernandez, except I'm not a murderer.
Fair enough. Fair enough. And then I think we also had and we're just talking from our own class. Like we had other talent there, but like if it's our own class only, I think we had a fullback. God, what's the name? Stocky kid. You already said it. Justin. Justin would be our
Justin
fullback.
Woods, yep.
You would not, if you're a running back, he just gives you a lane. That kid just gives you a lane.
Clear a path, yep.
Yep. So he's our fullback, and then I think we would have on the opposite side, like just the decoys, the hook route people, all this stuff. I can picture. I can picture.
I just
Chad.
want to. I would want to be a running back, and I think I could be like a Mike Allstott kind of running back, where
Yeah.
like, give me a fullback, and I'm already in the secondary, and it's just a stiff arm or a broken tackle away from, because
You can see that.
I was part of the fastest 4x1 team in school history.
You
So
were.
I'm pretty fast. And I felt like probably one of the good things about my athleticism in high school was I was good at changing directions and good in getting back to full speed quickly. That was why I felt like I looked athletic on the basketball court. It translated very well. I was good at cutting and getting back to full speed very quickly. So that I also think
You can actually see
I
that.
would.
So like if we did a power scheme, right? So it was a power scheme like run middle, or even like a stretch, I could totally see if you had Judson in front of you. So they think, oh, we got through the power guy now. So now we're good with attacking this guy. If you also stiff arm them and move through, I could actually see that being a good combination. Yep, good point.
Or
That makes
just
sense.
think of a wishbone with like Justin, me, and Wally, and one of us gets the ball, and like I don't see how anybody tackles us.
I don't either.
Either one of us, just depending. And yes, wishbone technically the fullback lines up in a certain area, but it's just like we're all interchangeable. So like now this play, I'm the fullback, and Wally's the tailback, and
Ooh,
Justin's the scat back. Or
I like that. And also, this is recorded, right? So
Yeah.
this is because I love this guy so much. You know where Jeff Mott would be?
No.
The stands.
He's the statistician. He would have been before his time. He'd be the guy telling us like, no, we don't run this play on 3rd and 1 because it's never successful.
Like
we
99% of the time it doesn't work. That's our guy. That's our guy. And he will love this. But if he ever watches this, which who knows, but he would love that.
Yeah, I don't.
Yeah, no, I think. But the other side, I'm missing one wide receiver. So we got Chad doing the hook route. I like that. But who would be the? Trying to think. And I want to do this again when Wally's on because he will yell at us and scream, and I can't wait for that.
Yeah, and he's probably a little bit more in tune with people that we went to school with. I feel like one person we're missing is Zach.
Oh my God.
Like he could definitely be, I don't know if he doesn't necessarily have breakaway speed, but he's got a catch radius. So he could be on the opposite side, kind of like an Alvin Harper to a Michael Irvin, if you will. And Alvin Harper, I think, had more catches in the Super Bowl than.
Also, I think I figured it out. So we put Tim in the X, who just run past everybody. We got 2 tight ends going, if it's a pass play, 2 tight ends going up, like one going straight up, and then one maybe going up and to the left. Put Josh Perkins to the very left on the left side, who runs up and then in. So if they're following Tim, who's running so fast, it could open him up, or one of the tight ends. Actually,
Tim would be good as a slot, as like a Julian Edelman as well. Just get him in space, a little dump off, and he's got some room. Yeah, that's. And you could do that. You could do that with that. You could do that with an X as well. But getting them in space should be the focal point of the offense in general.
I like that better. Yeah, Tim is Julian. I mean, he was tough too. He was a really tough. I saw him eat dirt so many times and he gets right back up. And I'm like, what? Yeah, that'd be great. So I like all that stuff. But if I wasn't the quarterback, because this is my fun thing, because I guarantee, in my mind anyway, I guarantee it'd be me. But who else would fit in?
As a quarterback, like the second stringer? What?
So even beyond me, like, so yeah, as a quarterback, you have to know the play. Like, so if you're playing a position, you know your own role. As a quarterback, you have to know everybody's role, what they're doing, where they're going, you got to change protections. Even in high school, you got to do that. Yeah. It's like who else could do that?
Well, I mean, I that's a good question. I feel like what kind of offense are we running? Are we running a 3-step drop, or are we running a shotgun, like a K-gun offense? Where are you getting the ball, Chet? That's what I want to know.
My ego says shotgun, but the truth is most high schools, it's like a 3-step and it's either like an option or something like that. So it'd probably be a run first offense.
So a run first offense. So whoever can make the pitch. So that would be you, and then Brendan Hickey. I don't know. I'm just throwing names out there. I feel like I've never seen him throw a ball. So,
but like
he doesn't have to throw a ball with me and Justin Woods and Owen Parento and Wally Hall as a form of a back. Like you don't have to.
We would never throw, but when we could, I could do it. It was my point. But you're right. Yeah. But you also have to know, like, let's say you're in a game and you're gonna take a shotgun snap and like throw it because there's this like really cool rollout play that a lot of people do. Like you're down by 6,
Some RPO, yeah.
you pull a shotgun, you give it, you hold it, you look at the thing, and you go, okay, I'm gonna keep it, and then you see the tight end going out that like either you or Wally, the Aaron Hernandez or the Robert Gronkowski, and you throw it. That's one of my favorites. I am a
Yeah.
football nerd, by the way, and I wish I knew what I know now.
Yeah.
And I grew up. I wish I was my own dad, if that makes any sense. And that Sabrina was my mom, and I had the chance to do what he gets to do. But it's so fun to watch him.
Yeah, I bet it is, man.
It's so
Again,
fun.
I just drive by Winnisquam and see the football field and I'm jealous. Like,
Right? Good. Come
yeah,
on.
it's
We would
it's
have killed
great.
it.
It's great that you guys have, your son specifically, and then Wally's son, Walter, and heck, even his daughter. If Dory wants to be a field goal kicker or play football, I'm sure.
Let's go.
I
Oh
hope
my
that
God.
they
By the way,
encourage her to do that. That'd be awesome.
spot on when you said Chad be the kicker. Spot on. That
Yeah,
makes so much sense. Because
yeah,
he's very smart. Like he's very smart. He would be able to look at like the wind. Yeah, fan fucking
yeah,
tastic.
man.
Good call.
He'd go out and win us a few games.
He would.
Speaking of football, though,
Yeah,
let's talk about the combine. The combine's this week.
let's
I
go.
think technically it started Wednesday or yesterday. The punters, long snappers, etc., hit the field yesterday. Today, I think, or tomorrow, the DBs and the skill players are this weekend for sure. But talking about the combine specifically, and we talk about the big question is always who's going to throw. One, it's an invite, so you got to be invited. So I do wonder if somebody that is invited decides not to throw or not to perform. I'm just going to go and do interviews, like what do they get somebody in there on the field to be able to prove themselves? I hope that they do. I don't know. Maybe that's one of the questions that I'm asking you. And then the second question is those people that are in position to say yes or no, how do you feel about them not willing? Put yourself in a GM position. They're not willing to compete against their peers on the biggest stage. Yes, they can do a pro day with their own guys. They can do both. I mean, they can do both technically. It's not a concern of as far as health. Like they're young kids, two different things that happen. 3 months or 2 months apart from each other. Plenty of time to recover. But what are your thoughts, Chet?
So so this is gonna sound weird. But I'm gonna start with Dave Matthews Band. Napster came out in what, like 2000,
Yeah,
I think.
remember it well.
So
Yeah,
so when that came out, there was a big controversy about whether or not musicians should be compensated. They're stealing their music. And so Dave Matthews, the guy, not the band, but the guy came out and said, you know what? I will let people record my live music. I
yeah,
should be compensated for like an original song or whatever, but I'll let people record it. And they're like, well, Metallica is so pissed off of a Napster. And he said something like, well, I get it. Like if you go out and you perform and you suck and you don't want anyone to hear it, then I get why you wouldn't want that. And so that's the way I feel at the combine. If you're refusing to go to the combine and show off what you can do, then you're concerned. To me, there's something there that says, I don't feel like I'm good enough for this, or the system isn't fair.
Hmm.
And so because the system isn't fair, I'm not going to go do it. And I want to make $1 million my first year or whatever. I feel strongly that the combine, whatever system is in place, you adjust to that. You go get it. If you want to be a millionaire and beat all of us and make more money, you show up and you show out. If you refuse to do that, red flag number one, in my opinion.
yeah. That's an interesting way of looking at it. I don't necessarily say red flag, but I like when I let's use Shador Sanders as an example.
Yeah.
He's definitely a top 10 pick. Like if he didn't take another snap, didn't touch another football, he could go through not even doing a pro day and he's going to be a top 10 pick. Or at a minimum, the second quarter, more than likely the second quarterback taken in the draft. So, and that's all based off of what he's already done on the field when the clock's running, when everything counts, right? So I feel like we kind of had a discussion about athletes and how they're why their pay is structured the way that it is, and then because they're making so much money when they roll an ankle, like it's let's get them healthy because it benefits us more monetarily when they're on
Yeah.
the court healthy. They can contribute more. We'd rather them be on the court somewhere between 80 to 100% as opposed to anything less than 80%. We're probably still going to win that game anyway, but like we can potentially win it without them. And so yeah, it's always about money, right? And like
Always.
especially with NIL, that's probably changing their perspective on whether they should or shouldn't. At the end of the day, if I'm a GM or a coach, I want to see guys come in here and compete. But what I think, let me suggest a revision of the scouting combine, as they call it. I think anybody that's a projected first round pick should not be allowed to participate. Meaning they're physically, they're not going to do anything. You hold your own pro day at your school after the combine, but you go to do interviews, you go to kind of see the space, see how it's done. You're a projected first round. Let's and how the rub is like, how does the NFL say who's a projected first round and who isn't? Does that mean that there's only 32 since there are only 32 picks in the first round? Or is it a pool of players that's more than 32 that are projected depending
Well,
on
why?
what happens?
Why?
I only say that because I'd rather see the guy that is flying low on the radar. I want to see them come in and blow everybody away. I don't want them to be seen as like, oh, now they're the new number one pick. But I want them to be seen as the next whiz bang guy who came in here and he's competing against his peers and he's excelling competing against his peers. And it's a guy that's not on the radar because it usually happens where one or two guys end up moving up and then they're selected in a position where they shouldn't have been and it looks bad. I'm not saying that if we leave the first round projected picks out, we're still allowing them to we're still allowing them to be evaluated on the nuances, the interviews, how, when I talk to you about offense, do you know what I'm talking about? When coaches and GMs get a feel for their personality, which is what they want to do. But
I actually see that. I see it. I see it. Again, that's a great way to look at it. So I'm pissed that these like people that are destined for greatness or being
Yeah.
rich at least, they don't go out there and show they can do it under pressure.
yeah,
You're saying let's give some other people a chance because these
Yeah.
they're taking all this. We already know they're going to get picked. We
Yeah,
already know that they're there. So let's give other Nate. That's a good perspective. I haven't actually thought of that.
yeah, I don't know how to handle it. I don't want to say like, again, the first round picks don't do it. I don't know what number that is. Maybe you just say the top 10 are the ones
Yeah.
that don't have. But then again, it's a projection where how we're seeing they're projected. It has nothing to do with the professionals that are there to see them. Like
Yeah.
the projections that are being done are by football analysis,
Mel Kiper.
not anybody that's going to actually make a decision on draft day. So how do we figure that out? I don't know, but I'd rather see. I my assumption is that even though somebody says they're not going to participate, then they're not. Again, Shador Sanders, they're not bringing in the guy that was on the bottom of the list that wasn't invited. They're not now bringing him in to work out. I hope that they are. My assumption is that that's not happening because he's still attending. And I'd rather see the number of quarterbacks that you got. Great. Let's bring in every one of them. And maybe then if we decide, whatever the number is, let's say there's 60 to 70 kids there that want to be drafted that aren't going to work out. They're going to wait till their pro day, but they're still invited, and they go through interviews and they go through medical and all that, and that's great. But then, do we bring in 70 more prospects so that GMs and coaches can get a look at them, and they might be now 6-round picks as opposed to they were undrafted, right? Like we see them competing against each
Like
other.
walk-ons.
I don't know. That was just
Walk-ons.
something that I thought. Yeah,
No, I like
you
it.
like it.
Your perspective is so different than mine, but you're
Well,
right.
don't get me wrong. I dislike the fact that top tier talent doesn't want to compete, but I understand the reasoning. I understand the reasoning, and like if we weigh the risk versus the reward, of course the risk is not worth the reward. I'm already a projected top 10 pick. That's my lottery ticket, even though again NAL exists and I've already hit a lottery ticket probably several times. But like I don't understand why we don't change the whole perspective, because again, I don't like that they don't want to compete. That from a standpoint of, again, a blue chip prospect or a kid that is not on the radar that wants to come in and compete, I want to give them an opportunity. But how, does that change the fact that this dude is still a number 10, a top 10 prospect? Like, no, it doesn't.
No, because over time they learned like, okay, you were projected number 4, then you went out and you made a bad pass or you missed a ball, and now you're 85, and that costs you money. So then it costs your agent money. And I think I despise that system in a way.
Yeah.
But what I like about what you just said is like, okay, fine, don't go out there then, and let's find this other person who has no chance, and let's bring them in and let them perform because they still want it. They don't feel like it's given to them. Let them go get it.
Yeah.
I do like that. I like that a lot, actually.
Yeah. It's funny. There's a kind of with this quarterback class, there's a different narrative than there was last year. Last year,
this quarterback class.
it was last year. It was somewhat clear cut. Like there were definitely, 2 top 3, or there was the top 3 were essentially probably, if you had to name 4 quarterbacks, they were in everybody's top 3. Not all 4 were a consensus top 3. But also last year, that what we were talking about was what the analysts were talking about was, oh well, again, if we use the Belichickian hierarchy of how we determine if a quarterback's good or not, we look at how many times have they been sacked and how many interceptions have they made. So we're looking at their decision-making process as opposed to, are they making decisions that hurt the team in or have a negative impact on the field in the game currently, or do they make the right decision to throw the ball away because they're not worried about getting sacked, or I'm sorry, they're not worried about their completion percentage going down, or are they making the right play for the team? And like case in point,
I get that.
Yeah, and case in point again, like the individual that had those statistics last year was Bo Nix, and then when we talk about on the opposite end, it seems like it's on the opposite end of the spectrum this year, where they're talking about, Shedeur Sanders is a great athlete. He can throw the ball, make any pro throw that you need him to make. But also look at how tough he is, because he's been sacked the most over the last 2 years in the major 5 conferences, right? Mm-hmm. Like, so the scripts flip slightly, because we got a kid that's uber talented, and we're not saying like, man, this is a detriment to him. Like, he's been sacked so many times. We're using it as now a strength. Like, oh, he's resilient. He gets sacked and he gets right back up, and he's tough, and those don't affect him. And I just don't understand why we changed the narrative. And I know it's a new year, but like, those things still matter. Like, getting sacked 92 times, that's something that you can go back to and like coverage sack, coverage sack, coverage sack.
Yes.
Like if
All
every
day.
one of them is a coverage sack, he's making the wrong read pre-snap. He's not understanding what the defense is presenting him with. And has he bailed himself out with his athleticism every within that series of downs? Potentially, but like I wonder why we're not talking about that.
I mean, that's all a good question. I mean, Cam Ward is ahead of him by leaps and bounds, apparently. And the quarterback class in general seems shitty. So there's Ward, Sanders. So I think
Yeah.
Sanders is getting like sort of like the almost like the grade on a curve.
Yeah.
To your point, right? Like it sounds like he's up there when in another year he'd be like the seventh quarterback off the board,
Yeah.
maybe. So I think we're seeing some of that, which is why it sucks for the Patriots because I mean we're going to be together for the draft, so we can do a draft one before that. But Wally's going to host, right?
He said he was, yeah. Or he said he's willing to. I don't
Okay.
know.
I mean, I can do it on a moment's notice, but like I'd love to go to Wally's house. Um, but I think the fourth pick for us, obviously, we don't need a quarterback. So if what you're saying is true and they actually see it that way, and Sanders is like an eighth pick, it screws us. Like what I would love is like 1-2 quarterback like last year,
Yeah.
and then who's third? Giants.
Giants, yeah.
Yeah. So they're going to pick Carter, let's say, leave us a Travis Hunter. I'd be okay with that. But it all depends on what happens in free agency in the next, like, what, 17 days?
Yeah.
I think.
What's gonna happen is the Giants are gonna make sure that everyone is convinced that they are taking a quarterback.
Yeah.
That is going there. That is the only strategy that they need to have. Whether they do or do not, they need to convince everyone that they think that, because again, probably Cam Ward is going number one overall to
That makes
Cleveland,
sense.
or no, I'm sorry, number two potentially to Cleveland.
Yep.
I don't know what. It's still up in the air. Anyway, all three of the top three teams need to convince everyone that they're taking a quarterback, and then that should increase the value of their pick. And like, if they want to move down, it should get people that need a quarterback. Like, I've seen some projections where Shador Sanders is going seventh to the Jets. Sorry, the other
But
team.
that's that. Yeah,
I
seventh.
think that's a great pick, but I
Yep.
don't think Shador is going to be available at 7. And if the Jets want him, they better assume that he's not going to be there at 7, because they need to trade up. They have some stock to trade. If you think that's the guy, you go get him.
Yeah.
We've talked about that before. So, but
Yeah.
yeah, it is. I know this draft class, as far as quarterbacks are concerned, is not lacking in talent, kind of like last year. But I feel like there's a lot of talent at the Bo Nix level, where it's intelligent, good quarterbacks that have some experience in big games, whether it's the Power 5 conferences, however you want to look at that. But I think there's going to be, like, again, there may not be a lot of quarterbacks drafted in the first round, but I feel like there's going to be some successful quarterbacks taken on the second day in the second and third round.
So I think all three quarterbacks drafted last year, we were all here together. Like, even Caleb Williams, like, that's not his fault what happened this year.
Yeah,
I look at that and I'm like, man, that's not this year for quarterbacks. But you see some incredible defensive players and some incredible cornerbacks. If you include Travis Hunter as a cornerback, then, like, man, defense this year is where you hit it. I'd love that Blue Carter. But the projections have us getting an offensive lineman who may have short arms, I guess. I don't know.
They've still got Campbell on there, and as Wally pointed out a while ago, where he's, if we look at the tackles specifically, one between all the projections, like Campbell is anywhere from like 4 to all the way down to 15, I think, in some. And like, And in some, he's not even the first offensive tackle taken. So I'd really love for the Patriots to figure out their offensive line via free agency.
Free agency, start there.
Do not go into the draft hoping that you get a good prospect at on the offensive line. Let's be smart about this. Let's spend every dime. Again, there are rules in this league that you need to spend a certain percentage of your cap space on your current roster. So last year we barely met that, right? And then this year we have to come up to that. So we have to spend. I don't think we'll get a league exemption on that because we can't use the excuse, well, players don't want to play for us. But I mean, we got to go out and offer some big money to, like, again, the offensive tackles that are available. And I'd love to see us get somebody like, even though he's a defensive player, he was just released by Washington Commanders. Defensive tackle. He's from Alabama.
Yep, I know exactly that.
I'd love to see us consider signing him. Again, somebody like that who hits free agency kind of all of a sudden. Hopefully, you don't catch them off guard with the offer, but like give him something, give him a pay raise, give him a nice bump. It's still a good financial decision because we save a little bit of money, but get in his ear. How many years do you want? What are you looking at? Give him a pay raise. Maybe we meet somewhere in the middle, but like I'd love to see us offer that dude. He's 30 years old. He went to Alabama, but I feel like, again, I want us to plug some holes before we get to the draft, and then go off of what our needs are at the time of the draft. And if that means I'd love to see us at draft day. Miles Garrett is going somewhere.
Oh, he's going somewhere.
If we still have room, and again, there's a lot of things that can happen. I mean, a movie with Kevin Costner, Draft Day, where he trades away some picks, gets some players, and then he ends up getting his picks back. Like that's a perfect scenario, right? But I'd love to see us, for instance, trade for, like, I don't know, man, whoever wants to move up. Let's think about that. Who wants to move up to number 4? And then let's say it's Miles Garrett and that's who we want, but let's that would give Cleveland 2 picks in the top 5.
We take Miles Garrett from Cleveland. They want number 4.
If we have our holes filled with again proven commodities, that's the only reason why we would consider that. But who wouldn't? Because again, proven commodities would mean we've shored up most of our offense and defensive lines, and we have a true offensive weapon.
Yep.
That would entice somebody like Miles Garrett wanting to come and sign a long-term contract with us. And he would be a huge impact on our defense. Like, there's no doubt about that. The guy is, and I'd be willing to give him the number 4 pick this year, and potentially
Miles Garrett?
Yeah.
Yeah, I would too.
That's assuming, let's say in a perfect world, again, we've got 123 million to spend. Let's say we spend 20 million on 2 offensive tackles, right? There's 40 million. We spend another, we'll call it 40 million on a wide receiver. That's 80 million. We still got some money left, but that shores up that gives us more confidence on the offense. That's for sure. And now let's focus on the defensive side. We signed that guy from Alabama for 22 million over 3 years. All right. Now we're cooking. And where are we at now? That's 100. That's 100 million on, 3 players, 4 players, boom, done.
Done.
And then we trade for Myles Garrett.
$68 million left.
We trade for Myles Garrett. Sign him to I don't know, a 5-year, $30 million contract.
I love that. I actually love that. That sounds great. What else we have in the docket? I got one more topic left in me because these girls are going to bed down here and I gotta go upstairs.
It depends on the answer to this question. Did you, because I didn't. So did you read or hear anything about the NFLPA report? Which was last year we talked about it, about what teams were in the upper echelon of how the players like the facilities, like the ownership. You did? Did you hear anything about the Patriots?
No, but the one thing that stuck out to me was that the Jets players gave the owner an F.
Well, I mean, I think we knew that was coming. I'm not gonna lie. We knew that was coming based off of the performance of the team and then the whole Aaron Rodgers situation. But I can't fault the owner for trying to do what they think is best for the organization.
Sure, but they were rumors, and whether they were true or not, it was like he was asking his kids about Madden ratings to decide about whether or not he's going to hire someone or not.
Oh yeah, that was Woody Johnson, right?
Yeah,
that was
terrible.
Yeah,
that's terrible.
Yeah, that was a bad leak. I wouldn't be surprised, in all honesty, if his kids came up with that response in jest. But it was also their true opinion. But they used that. They used that as
they said it, so they feel good. You're right. That's possible.
Yeah.
Incredibly possible. Yeah.
But it was either way. The decision turned out bad, and of course the players are going to say that the organization is terrible because they made bad decisions, and that translated on the field. They made what at the time everybody thought was good decisions, but they didn't pan out for whatever
I don't
reason.
understand. If you have Aaron Rodgers, right? And he goes down 4 plays in, and you have a year to figure out what you want to do.
Yeah.
And that's what they came up with. That's tough because Aaron Rodgers is still good. I stand by that. He's crazy, but he's still very good.
Yeah. Well, I mean, again, why do you fire the head coach? Or why wasn't that a point of something that you did prior to going into the new season? Like,
I agree with that.
You just stick with you changed leadership. You literally weakened the organization or the football team by taking the leadership or whatever leadership they had on the sidelines out. Like, at a minimum, I feel like the coaching staff and the players did support the head coach. And then you fire him, and there's an interim who's, he looked good on the defensive coordinator side, but wasn't ready for a head coaching position. So
you tell me you wouldn't love Robert Saleh as a defensive coordinator, because I would. And now San Francisco has him back. San Francisco has him back.
Yeah, they're running it back with him. Yeah.
Yeah.
But if you haven't heard, though, the Patriots they had some very interesting reporting done from the NFLPA. That apparently their team plane has no Wi-Fi.
What?
And they have ashtrays. Like that's how old the team plane is. They still have ashtrays in the little handrest. So and again, they did not fare well at all. And I'll do more research, and we need to talk about this with Wally.
Can't wait for this. Yeah.
I would not be surprised if part of the reason why they don't have Wi-Fi is because it's a LAN, right?
Yeah.
I'm going to put in a hard drive with all of the data for the defense and offensive schemes, and this is the only thing that you can watch while you're on this plane. I have no doubt about that, because it probably what probably wasn't brought out in that report is that they have an open bar. They have a smorgasbord of food there. Like, I'm sure there's two sides to that coin. There is a reason why you don't need Wi-Fi while you're traveling with the team.
Yeah.
but there also is a reason why, meaning if a family emergency happens, let's be honest, if a family emergency happens mid-flight, they're not turning the freaking plane around.
No, they're not.
The plane's still going to take off and land in the same manner that it would, and then we're going to figure out the situation, the emergency when you get on the ground. So knowing the emergency while you're in the air, does it help at all? Probably I would argue no, but would you want to know? Me as an individual, yes, I would. So
I would. Yeah.
but
You want to
yeah,
know, but you're willing to absorb that stress and anxiety, but you still want to know
yeah,
when it's happening. I get that.
yeah.
I get that. Man,
Oh, so yeah, the only thing left I had was
you good?
a baseball.
Oh yeah, go ahead.
I mean, we can talk about it, but I'd like to actually revisit it with the group.
Yeah, I'm
It
not a good
was,
baseball guy, but like, what's the topic in general?
yeah, it was the baseball ABS, automated balls and strikes system.
Oh,
So for preseason or during spring training, they're using an automated system where coaches and umpires can, you know, I think players, or it's the same initiation system as like the NBA. A player can be like, I want to see the replay on that. I think I brushed the plate with that strike. Like, let's get a replay. And
so how
then
long does that take? Because baseball's already really,
uh yeah, I think it's only taking like literally like less than 15 seconds. Because
really.
it's like, yeah, there's somebody watching the automated system and like they've already seen it, so it's just a confirmation like, hey, but I think what they're missing here is, you know, I don't want it to turn into where that automated system is the end all be all, meaning take away the umpire because this system will give us exactly what we want. I want them to not introduce any instant replay with it. I want them to use the system as a way to evaluate the umpires.
Okay, I see that. I like that.
Yeah. I don't want to ever hear about, oh, this was a bad call or that, unless we're talking about, again, evaluating that play with that system. But
But
like,
keep it human, but then give that as an
yeah,
evaluation. I
yeah.
like
But all
really like that.
just like when players aren't performing and they get sent down to the minor leagues, like if an umpire isn't perform, I only want the best umpires with the best judgment and the best eyesight, everything. Like if the umpire wasn't wearing his contacts that day, of course the analytics are going to change his performance. So
Yeah.
that should be an evaluation process that the major league adopts, and like again, there's a camera system on the umpire. It
Yep.
shows it doesn't need to tell the umpire. They make the call, and we're Major League Baseball. That's history. Like they made the call, that's history. But analytically, we're showing, we're going to tell you 75% of the calls you made were good, 25 were not. We're reducing your
Like that.
salary, or we're no longer putting you behind the plate.
No, you can't be that. It's like the Super Bowl. Like you can't. It's what they do in football. Like they watch all the games, and the referees that are in the Super Bowl making that big paycheck are the ones that made the most accurate calls after
Yeah.
review. So I like that.
Yeah.
Anyway, I'm
Yeah.
uh
You ready to call it?
I'm not, but I have to go take care of this
Oh
whole
yeah.
house. But yeah,
Well,
how about you? Anything else left?
no, I just I discovered something lately. I figured out that I only know 25 letters of the alphabet, but I don't know why.
Fine, I got this. Um, I do not like boy bands. Just don't like them. This is what I said during my full staff meeting. Just do not like boy bands. But there was one underrated. Take Five.
I don't know. I don't get it.
They didn't either. It took some of them a while. What I meant was take a 5-minute break And like some people were sitting there as people were getting up and walking out, and they were like, oh my God, they're like these rude people. So some people got it, and then it took other people a couple seconds. So I felt really good about that one.
Okay.
Because
We'll
there's
go
like
with that
Backstreet
then.
Boys and NSYNC and all that bullshit. And then there was like this one band that wasn't a big deal called Take Five. And so I was like, that was my joke.
Was it really a boy band?
Yeah.
Oh, that took way too much explaining for me to get it. I'm sorry. I don't know boy bands. I'm sorry.
Well, neither do I. That's what made it funny.
Oh,
Either way,
okay.
my friend, you have a wonderful night. I'm gonna go deal with this. I'm gonna go upstairs. I'm gonna maybe have a snack and a few drinks, watch something, and go to bed. How about you?
All right. Same man. But thanks for getting on. Thanks for
Of
the
course.
conversation. I appreciate it. Don't forget to smash the like button. Follow us on Instagram, Twitter, sorry, not Twitter, X, Facebook, and TikTok.
Love it. Love it. Good
Love
night.
you, man. Take care.
You too. All right.
Have
Good
a
night.
good weekend.
You too. Good
Bye.
night.